Hello and welcome to the World Wanderers podcast, a proud part of the Wander Barn Podcast Network.
I'm Ryan.
I'm Amanda.
And we're your hosts.
We're a traveling couple and digital nomads taking you on our adventures as we explore locations, destinations, and careers.
Enjoy the show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the World Wanderers podcast. We are excited that you're here with us today for today's episode. And today on the podcast, we are joined by Tawan Perry. Tawan is a full-time remote digital marketer and YouTuber who is living in Cancun, Mexico. And in this episode, Tawan shares his journey to becoming a digital nomad, what inspired him to do that, and how he's been able to live full-time in Mexico through his work as a digital marketer. And he also shares why digital marketing is a great career for digital nomads, his top tips for getting started in that industry, and much more. So if you've been thinking that you might want to move to Mexico or move to another country in the world, or maybe start working and traveling, but you haven't been sure about, how exactly to go about that or what careers might pay well, digital marketing is a really, really great option with tons of career options within that sort of space. And Tawan has lots of great tips for how you can get started and all of that good stuff. So we hope that you enjoy this episode. And without further ado, here is Tawan. Welcome to the podcast today, Tawan. We're really excited to have you here with us.
And thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And where are you joining us from today?
I am joining you from Cancun, Mexico.
Amazing. We're just not too far from you. I mean, in a drive, it would probably take us like 12, 14 hours, but maybe an hour flight.
Yeah, that's not that close. But on flight, yeah, you could definitely be here in no time.
Yeah, for sure. And so we'd love to, hear how you got to Mexico, but maybe let's back up a little bit. Can you tell us a little bit about your background with travel and a little bit about your travel story?
Okay. The first time the travel bug hit me was way back in 2005 when I was invited on a trip out of the country to Rio de Janeiro for one of my friends. And it was epic, to say the least, because I had never really went out of the country, went that far and been around, a culture that didn't speak any English. And just, if you've ever been to Rio, it's one of the most beautiful places on the planet, in my opinion. And so from that point on, I kept traveling, but it wasn't consistent because I still was working full time. So it was sort of like, I get my 1 week here, 1 week there, sneak a holiday in for around the holidays, sneak a travel adventure in over the holidays. And then I would say what really changed for me was around 2015, because that's when I took a trip to Southeast Asia. And my very first time going there, I stayed for like 3 months. So essentially, I was backpacking. And I loved every minute of it. But of course, I ran out of money and I had to come back home. And the thing that kept bothering me was how could I make this work? How could I stay? At the time, I was running my business. I was a motivational speaker. So I would make the bulk of my money, say like in the fall, and then take some of that money and I would travel to Southeast Asia for the winter, essentially. And so fast forward, COVID happened. And when COVID happened, I was stuck like everyone else in 2020. But I vowed to get back on a plane and go somewhere because I had got accustomed to being away for months at a time. And I really loved it. I realized that the cost of living was cheaper. The food was better. The people seemed friendlier, just everything about it I was really excited about. And so during the quarantine or during the slowdown that we had in early 2020, I made it my mission to find something that I could do and take anywhere in the world. Because I knew about digital nomads, but I guess I only understood it from the entrepreneurial side. I had no idea that you could actually work for an agency and be hired and then from there go where you want to go. I had no idea about that. So that's what I did. And that's how I got to Mexico. I came to Mexico because it had really the best entry requirements, where really were no entry requirements. So it was very attractive, and it was closer to United States.
Yeah, that's really interesting to hear. And so your travels between kind of like 2015 when you were backpacking longer term and then 2020 when the pandemic hit, were you kind of like when you weren't motivational speaking, it's like I'm, going places, I'm seeing places, I'm kind of like living off savings to be able to travel and see the world? Or what was that like?
Exactly. That's what it was. And of course, the problem with that is you're living off of borrowed time. I mean, I knew that August, September, October, and a little bit of November, I made most of my money. So I planned around, being in the United States those months. But the rest of the time, it was sort of my mission to be somewhere else. So I went backpacking in Europe. I went backpacking, of course, in Southeast Asia. I've been a lot of places, and I've been very grateful for that. But a lot of that came down to me just being strategic more than anything.
Yeah. And so when the pandemic hits and you're kind of in this position where a lot of your work comes in person, were you kind of like right as soon as that stuff started happening, you were like, hey, I need to think about changing this, changing up my career focus? Or was it a little bit later where you were like, okay, I want to start traveling again, and then I want to find a way to be able to have a career that I can do while I'm traveling?
Well, fortunately, a lot of the speaking engagements that I was getting in 2020 and even part of this year were all virtual. So we were able to make that transition. But the problem was the money was even more inconsistent than what it was before. So understanding that my money was consistent from the beginning, I had to come to the idea that, okay, you're going to have to go and probably work for someone, at least for a little while. And, and then when the opportunity arises, you can go and travel. So that was pretty much the plan. And let me tell you, digital marketing wasn't one of those things, like I said, I knew about. I had to do a little digging because the first thing that I was going to do was going to be teaching online. I know that's probably very cliche for a lot of digital nomads, but that's what I was exposed to. So that's kind of what I knew. And then all of a sudden, I found this young man who was teaching people how to do this, how to become a digital marketer, how to, most importantly, find jobs in digital marketing, because I think it's still something that most people don't know about, even though we're all in some way, shape, or form interacting with social media every day. And so once I found this guy and took his course, I knew it was going to be game on after that. I knew that my life was going to change forever, because wherever I went, I was able to make money and stay as long as I wanted to. And that's anyone's dream. But I think, let me say this before we move forward, but I think when people say digital nomad, everyone assumes you're a YouTuber or some type of influencer, or maybe do some freelance work. And there are a lot of people that do that. But the problem with that is, unless you're really established, it can be very inconsistent. Being an entrepreneur is one of the hardest things you can do, because especially in the beginning, you're just unestablished. No one knows who you are. So you got to build trust and a reputation.
Yeah. And yeah, I think it's something we like to focus on as well. Just when I think even more so recently, there's become kind of this sometimes like a negative connotation around digital nomad, because people think that and think like, oh, I need to be like a YouTuber, or I need to be some like, person who's just selling courses or something. But there's like this whole world of things you can do. And one of the greatest things about the past little while is so many more jobs are remote now. You can do them if you can do them from your home, you can do them from a different country, which is awesome. Right. But for you, Tawan, once you started thinking like, okay, I want to go to Mexico, had you had much experience traveling to Mexico before? And then how did you, I guess that my question might be, did you go to Cancun first, or how did you kind of settle on where you wanted to go?
I went to Cancun first, and to answer your question, I had no previous experience with Mexico. went to Mexico one time, and that was on a cruise. And everyone knows if you're on a cruise, you spend maybe a couple of hours in a country and then you get back on a boat. So to me, that didn't really count. I didn't know Spanish initially when I got here. So I've been learning a lot of Spanish since I've been here, a lot about the culture. I didn't have any friends. So this for me was a completely new beginning. My initial thought was to go to, I believe the place is called Merida. because that's one of the safest places in all of Mexico. But I got to tell you, man, when I got here and saw that water and the beach, and I stayed here for like 2 weeks, I was like, no, I think I want to stay here longer. And so I've been here ever since.
And how long ago was that?
Oh, that was I got here October the 31st, 2020.
Oh, wow. So you've been in Cancun for over a year now.
Yes, but I've traveled other places. I've been to Mexico City. I've been to Medellin. I've been up, obviously, to Playa del Carmen, Isla Mujeres, places like that. So,
yeah, no, that's amazing though that you were able to, find a place and just kind of make a home out of it. And I think that this is, one of the amazing things about nomad life versus like maybe backpacking is that you can kind of settle down somewhere because you're working and then kind of create a community. I'd love to hear a little bit about, just that aspect of things. Like, have you been able to kind of, build a community? And for anyone who's maybe thinking about like a move outside of their home country, what tips do you have for them?
Well, I think the first tip is that you just have to be open-minded. That's the first thing. I will admit I don't do a great job of always going out. I'm mostly out in the morning time, then sometimes in the evenings, and then of course the weekends. But I'm always smiling. I'm always trying to engage with people, particularly people who speak Spanish, because again, I need the practice, I need the repetition. So I think that's the first thing. Be open, be friendly. Another pro tip I want to give people is a lot of times in Latin countries, or I'll just speak to Mexico, if you're going the route of renting an apartment, there's a lot of requirements. However, if you go the route of Airbnb and you build a good rapport with the landlord, a lot of times you can have a informal agreement. But I have not signed a lease since I've been here, and it's worked out perfectly, for me. And the only reason why I haven't left is because the rent is very affordable and it's in a great, great location. So that's another tip I would say. And as far as building a community, it's difficult in a place like Cancun simply because this is a tourist destination. So people are coming and going all the time. But I have managed to get to know a few people in neighboring towns or cities. For example, in Playa del Carmen, I know a few people there. So of course, they'll come and visit me, or I'll go and visit them. And I think that's sort of the best way. Just don't be afraid to get out of your comfort zone. I mean, that's the whole idea, I think, of being a digital nomad and being a traveler. You have to be okay with being uncomfortable sometimes, but then getting in the mindset of just starting new and starting fresh and being okay with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Thanks for sharing that. And I think those are definitely things we can relate to as well, that we've experienced through our journey. And it is very like it can be uncomfortable, but I think that that's also what a lot of us are seeking in some ways. Like if we didn't want, the discomfort or something outside of our comfort zones, we probably would never leave like our hometown or the city that we were living in and our home country and that type of thing. And sure, there's challenges with like language barriers and cultural differences and stuff, but I feel like that's part of the fun of this lifestyle.
Yeah, and I think too, people are generally a little bit more open when they're away from their home country because they're just like you, right? They're looking for a connection, and if you present yourself as someone that they can connect to, then you'll usually be in good company. Obviously, use caution and things like that. But in my experience, and traveling all over the world, I mean, I've met some really good people because we all were maybe at the same hostel or something like that. And it just was a lot easier to connect. And I think that if I had saw any of these people in my home country, or maybe if I was there, we might not would have connected in that way, especially with, say, Americans, right? Because you share the same language, you share the same country, you might share some of the same values. So it's a little bit easier because you have that commonality. But of course, if you don't, the good thing is, if they're from, say, Argentina and you're from the United States, that's attractive because there's something that you can bring to the relationship and it's something that they can bring, because you both are sort of exchanging information about each other's culture and things like that.
Yeah. I think for us, that was really formative for as well when we were just starting to travel, spending a lot of time in hostels. Just get to meet such a wide range of people, like, all sorts of different countries, all sorts of different careers, all sorts of different life experiences, people who dress different ways, talk different ways, speak different languages. And you kind of start to notice that, like, yeah, we've got these kind of like, we'll see someone and maybe think like, oh, we're probably not going to connect. So you don't have those conversations. But when you're in a hostel, you're kind of forced to talk to those people, and you realize like, oh, this person who maybe I wouldn't have invested a lot of time in, I actually connect really well with, which I think is cool.
And like I said, everybody, they may not necessarily always express it, but I think we all want that when we're traveling. I really believe that deep down inside. Some connections are a little bit easier than others. Some you connect with right away, some you don't. I think you just have to go with the flow. I met one of my friends, Lucas, who is Argentinian. And at some point, I hope next year I'll get down to Argentina to visit him, because we've been talking about for so long now. I met him while I was in the Philippines, in Boracay, and this was 4 years ago. And so we've managed to stay in touch that whole time. So some people, you just continue to build a lifelong friendship with. Some people not so much, but either way, you have those great memories. And I think that's one of the best parts about traveling.
Yeah. And so kind of shifting gears a little bit towards the career side of things, can you kind of walk us through that, the steps you took? You mentioned like finding a course, getting started. Were you kind of doing all this back at home in the States, or had you already moved and then we're going through the process of like learning different marketing skills? And then how did you kind of go from those early learning days into, finding an opportunity with a marketing agency?
Okay. So great question. I did not leave the United States until I knew I had solidified an opportunity. So let's start there. I knew a few things about marketing because, of course, as a motivational speaker and being in business for myself, I had to find creative ways to market to potential clients. So that background was kind of already there, but I never did the majority of my business with Facebook advertisement or Google Ads advertisement. So that was very new to me in a lot of ways. And so I took this course, and I'll give you the rundown. The rundown is if I'm someone that wants to get into digital marketing, I think one of the easiest positions that you can try to get is that of a media buyer, a pay-per-click specialist, or a social media manager, in any one of those positions, as opposed to, let's say, search engine optimization specialist or graphic designer or something like that. One, because the barrier of entry is very low. Many of these positions don't even require you have a college degree. What they care about is your skill level. And the skills that you should be focusing on should be learning how to build campaigns on Facebook as well as Google Ads. There are typically three things within Google Ads. There is search, there is display, and there is YouTube. I would say to people to focus on YouTube, since many businesses want their advertisements to be on YouTube. So that's the first one. Then maybe the second one is search. And then this third one is display. And these are the different types of ads that you run on those platforms. So just to be clear, but it's all Google Ads. And of course, Facebook, if you learn Facebook, you're going to learn Instagram because it's the same thing. But if you learn those two, I think they're going to give you great fundamental knowledge, because many of the other ones are LinkedIn, the Twitter, the TikTok, all that stuff, systems are very similar. So if you learn those and then maybe learn a little bit about Excel spreadsheets, how to do pivot tables, I think you'll be ready to apply for some jobs. And when you apply for jobs, I would highly encourage people to put as many keywords as possible in their resume that sort of match the descriptions within the that you'll find, let's say on LinkedIn or Indeed or something like that. Try to match it up as best as you can. Now, in my coaching, I help you with a lot of that stuff. So by the time you're done with my coaching, you're definitely ready to put yourself in a position to be hired. I would say also, after they've learned those skills, I would say, just apply. Because here's the thing. There are so many people out here who already don't know that you can even get a job in this field. But then too, there are so many people that's not really qualified. And when I mean qualified, they're just not good. And that's not me ragging on anybody because I don't consider myself to be great at it. But here's the thing. If you come in there with a willingness to learn, then they're going to teach you everything you need to know. And as we all know, when you're getting a job, a lot of times, they're going to teach you things the way they do it. Because if I look at the two jobs that I've had in digital marketing, they're both very different. They do things completely different. And so it's just a matter of me being familiar enough to be able to explain the process of how a campaign works, how to optimize campaigns. When would I maybe change the bidding? I mean, all these things that you may get asked, but see, a lot of times they don't necessarily want you to expect you to know. They just want to see potential. And if you can show potential and promise, someone's going to hire you. The last thing I want to say is apply to as many jobs you can. What I tell my students is apply to up to 500 jobs. And you might say, oh my God, that's a lot of jobs to apply for. Well, on LinkedIn, here's another pro tip. There is a button for easy apply. And once you have your resume put together, you just click easy apply. And many of those jobs you can apply for in less than 2 minutes. And so that's how you accumulate the numbers. Because at the end of the day, it's just a numbers game. And I want to say one more thing, and that is you are providing a service of value right now, because many businesses, as we know, have been forced to go digital, completely digital. And agencies have gotten more business. And so they're overwhelmed. They need people that can come in there, learn very quickly, and do the job. So there's plenty of opportunity out there. And I can tell you, you can literally go from not having any experience to making $60,000 your first year. And then from there, it's onward. It's 80, it's 90, it's 100,000. I don't know of too many professions where in a matter of 2 to 3 years, you could be making 6 figures and living anywhere you want to live in the world. I mean, yes, tech, but I think tech is a lot more harder. And that was another thing I was thinking about doing was programming. But with so many different programming languages, I absolutely had no idea where really to begin. And I thought that digital marketing seemed to be a little bit easier to learn. And I was right.
Yeah, thanks for sharing all of that. That's really good information. And digital marketing is such like a broad term for a career. So there's so many different things that you can do within it. I'm curious if in your experience, if it's been helpful for people to get jobs by like specializing in one of the areas, like maybe you specialize in SEO or you specialize in social media management or Facebook ads. Has that been your experience, or is it better to kind of, have all the skills?
Specialize. And then of course, once you get that maybe first job, part-time or, on the side or whatever, start learning some of those other skills. Right now, I'm learning a little bit about SEO, but, right now my love is still, media buying and social media buying and things like that. So I think that if you go in with this, okay, I'm going to build websites, I'm going to do graphic design, I think that's too much at once. I think you pick one thing, focus on that, spend some time with that, and most importantly, get paid to learn. Get paid to learn, because your first 3 months, that's all you're going to be doing. You're going to be learning. They're not going to, I don't think there's too many businesses out there that's going to just throw the book at you and expect you to know everything. Usually there's a more senior person at these jobs, and they train you. And then eventually they allow you to they give you more responsibility. Because that's what's happening now. I've been on my job for about 3 months. and they're just giving me more opportunities now. And I'm growing. And then, of course, you build other skills. Like one thing I want to learn is Google Tag Manager, because those jobs pay very, very well. And of course, it isn't all about the money, but I just want to make sure I have skills that will set me apart from other people. Because I want to continue to stay abroad. I don't have any intentions of really going back to the States.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, yeah, it's not all about the money, but at the same time, money obviously makes life a lot easier in a lot of ways and makes it a lot more sustainable, which is really great. I'm curious if you have any recommendations for platforms I know you mentioned like LinkedIn, but any other platforms for like finding these types of jobs or applying for these types of jobs?
I mean, to be honest with you, LinkedIn is going to be all you need. You can do Indeed. You can do Glassdoor, but I think for me, I found every opportunity that I've ever interviewed or otherwise on LinkedIn. And by the way, there are so many recruiters on LinkedIn. They will find you and they will constantly want to interview you, especially after you have spent a little bit of time at an agency. So for me, when I started to see an uptick in recruiters wanting, to interview me, it was after I had about 4 or 5 months at my first agency. So again, what I love about this profession is that there are plenty of opportunities. They're not going anywhere. As a matter of fact, we haven't even talked about the metaverse. So there's going to be a whole set of opportunities there. There's going to be a whole set of opportunities when we start talking about augmented reality, when you're wearing, the Google glasses and things like that. So I think in digital marketing, as broad as it may be, there's going to be so many opportunities. And I think that if people position themselves for these opportunities, they can have a great life, especially when you live in a place like Mexico, where the cost of living is very minimal. And, of course, you're getting, US dollars. You can do whatever you want, because you have the money.
Yeah. And so you touched on this a tiny bit earlier or briefly earlier. But I think kind of the classic thing with the digital nomads, and maybe it's just our personality types, the people who are drawn to this, of like more of the independent streak, like want to do our own thing. But with the digital nomad lifestyle, traditionally people think like, I've got to do my own thing. I've got to, build my own business. Like I'm going to learn marketing and become a freelancer, start my own marketing business. Can you touch on just a little bit about the value of, finding more of a traditional role within a company, within an agency, how that kind of helps with learning, getting started, and just like why that route has more value than sometimes people give it credit for?
Well, I think it has more value because, you come to the table with more credibility. And let's just call it what it is. If you screw up, you're kind of screwing up on someone else's dime. I would never tell anybody just to open up their agency without ever working for an agency. That would be very bad advice. So, find out if this is something that you really want to put a business into, because there's so much more that goes into having a business because, as they say, you pay the cost to be the boss. And so I think that, the benefit is really learning what you're doing. And the thing about digital marketing, so much is constantly changing. So even, if you do, go into the business for yourself, you may not have people that you can rely upon. Like there's people in my job that are way more skilled than me. So if I'm struggling with something, I can tap into that. Whereas if you're an entrepreneur, you may not necessarily, do that. You may have to find all these things out yourself, or subcontract to someone that you're going to spend tons of money to pay in order to fix a problem that maybe you don't know how to fix or you created. So I think there's a lot of benefit into that. And the other thing I would say, instead of me just kind of wandering off and doing my own thing all the time, I have a little bit more structure. Right now, don't get me wrong. There are nights that, I want to hang out just like everybody else till 2 or 3 in the morning. But, I know I have to be at work at 9. I have to log in at 9. And so it's not something that you're willing to necessarily risk. And let me say this too. the life of working for an agency, and maybe this is something I shouldn't say, maybe I shouldn't give away this secret, but it is, you're documenting 40 hours, but rarely do you really work 40 hours. Just doesn't happen. I have not worked a full 40 hours since I've been in any of my agencies. What happens is they give you a lot of time to get your projects done. And then the rest of the time when you're not working your projects, you're in meetings. Some agencies have a heavy culture of meetings. Like my last agency, we had a lot more meetings than I do now. I feel like the current company I work for now is a lot more respectful of my time than the other agency is. So I say all this to basically say, you're going to document 40 hours, but you're not really going to work 40 hours. And here's why. Because clients, they write off all their marketing expenses. So they don't mind paying the money as long as they're getting production. Your agency wants you to document, to put down, a certain amount of hours simply because they're getting paid. They can build that out. And maybe I'm saying the quiet part out loud right now, but that's just the truth. And so I say all that to say that you'll still have plenty of time to do a lot of things. You may say to your coworker, look, I'm going to step away for an hour or two. As long as you get the work done, that's all that matters. There's not like a weird situation, at least not my current company, where people are watching you. We see that you weren't logged in this time. Where were you? It's not that sort of thing. They treat you like an adult. And I think what we're seeing now with so many people quitting their jobs, particularly a lot of low-paying jobs, because I think people are not treated like adults. And they don't feel like their time or their energy is respected. Whereas I think in digital marketing, your time and your energy is respected. They want you to give production. And in the case of paid social media, let's say that you don't hit the mark. Okay, let's say that you projected this to give you a profit of this much. Well, there's so much that can happen in a campaign where you don't hit the mark. As long as you're able to explain that in a reasonable way to a client, you're good to go.
Yeah, that was a lot of good information. So thank you for that. And yeah, I think one thing that's kind of always, I guess, like puzzled me about maybe like the way we work in our society and maybe in our like Western society is this idea like of you can't not be in the office because then I can't like be, paying attention to what you are not doing. And I think for me, I've never really liked being like micromanaged or, felt like I'm not trusted to get my work done. And I think that a silver lining of the pandemic has been, showing both employees and employers that it is possible for people to get work done from home or from other places. And, we do have to have a little trust in people and trust that, hey, if they took an hour to go grocery shopping or go to a cenote or whatever it is, that they're still getting their work done. And that brings me to, you kind of brought this up a little bit, but to a question that I think is quite common with this type of lifestyle is, how do you make sure that you balance both like work and travel? Because obviously, living in Cancun is like an absolute dream to so many people, and living in Mexico in general. It's like, obviously we have to get work done. We have to get it done in a timely manner to make sure that we get paid and keep our jobs. So how do you personally kind of do that with your work?
Well, we get a lot of PTOs, and that stands for paid time off. Right now, my company, we have unlimited. So essentially, if I wanted to, I could take 2 weeks off. Now, obviously, I have to have a good reason for that. But we get a lot of holidays and we get a lot of PTO. So I try to schedule things around there. I maybe do 1 or 2 small trips a month. And when I say small, I mean, I'm talking about going to Tulum or Playa del Carmen. I mean, nothing too far away. The problem that we're at right now in this world is traveling has become a little bit more complicated than what it used to be. So I don't, go in and out of the country, as much. And plus, there's talk that in Mexico, at least, they haven't been giving tourists the full 6 months anymore. Now, of course, that's neither here or there. It just depends on the immigration officer. But I have been a little bit more I slow travel more than anything, and I really take advantage of the long weekends that I may get off because, you can do a lot in 4 days. So let's say, for example, this week we're off on Friday, Saturday, of course, and we never work weekends. So Saturday, Sunday, and then let's say if I decide to take off Monday, so that's 4 days. So you can easily go somewhere that maybe go to Guadalajara or Mexico City or Chiapas and come right back, or just say, you know what, I'm gonna stay here to the end of the week. So that's what you would basically do. As long as you have internet, you're good to go.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that we really love about Mexico as well. Well, I guess first to back up a tiny bit, the nomad style of travel of just being able to stay a longer period of time and then you kind of just dip your toes into other places, take a weekend here, take a weekend there, is awesome. And I think it's one of the amazing things about Mexico as well, where I think for Canadians like us, for Americans, we kind of think of Mexico, we think like beach resorts, but there's so much here to explore. And if you can have that stretch of stay here for a year, stay here for 6 months, stay here for however long it is, like you said, you go to Chiapas, you go to Mexico City, you go to Monterrey, like there's so many cool things you can do just with a weekend trip.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, Mexico really is inexhaustible if you think about it. There's so much to see and so much to do in Mexico. And again, this job is perfect for being a digital nomad. It just is. I never thought that I would find something quite like this. Like I said, I thought I might be, may have to be like a ESL teacher or something, which of course there's nothing wrong with that. But I think this is way better because one, you get paid more money and you're in an industry that literally everywhere you go in the world, someone needs someone to do this kind of work. Matter of fact, I have been working with a company here in Mexico. I made friends with someone who used to work out at the gym I used to work out at. And she is a wedding entertainment promoter. And so I'm helping her do some marketing for her company to help her get business. So there's opportunity everywhere. You could easily, work with local businesses here because they need all the help they can get. Or you can just stick to the traditional 9 to 5. Another thing I want to say too is very rarely am I asked to do anything past 5:30. Very rarely. So again, you have plenty of time to do what you need to do because as a person who is, let's say, either in a junior or associate or just a regular position, you're not asked to be a leader. You're just basically asked to come in, get work done, and attend meetings. And at the end of the day, you can cut your computer off and be rest assured that you're fine.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that setting those work boundaries is really helpful too, where you have some sort of like shutdown time. And like you were saying, you can take those long weekends and stuff like that. And I think that, yes, travel is certainly much more complicated right now. And we've been very similar to you where we're not going that many places at the moment. And part of it is that like we get to live in this country where there's so much to explore, which is such a blessing. It's like I don't really feel the need that often to actually leave Mexico, which is pretty cool. One of the things I wanted to ask you about was just, especially since you did this in the last couple of years, is like, if somebody's at home right now and they're looking to make the jump to digital nomad life, like what are some of the things that they should know? What are some of the things that they should like prepare for, or, just any tips you have for somebody who's kind of like thinking about this, but hasn't actually like left home yet?
The biggest thing is be comfortable with not knowing things. I can't tell you how many times, during this whole experience, I just did not know something. And imposter syndrome is real, right? It may not be on the same level as someone who works in tech, but it still is something that you feel. As a matter of fact, the first 3 months at my first job, I really felt inadequate. I felt like I didn't know anything. I was questioning, are they going to one day pull my card and call me a fraud and fire me. I was really worried about that. And then, over time, I began to just get more confidence because one, I was in a nurturing environment. And two, you have to just get over it. So this whole experience is going to seem scary at first, but we all go through it. There's no college degree that you can get in digital marketing. Even if it was, the problem with the field is so dynamic that I think it would be hard to sort of offer something like that. I know some schools are doing boot camps and things like that, but to me, you don't need to spend $15,000 or anything like that. Don't do that. Obviously, I would want people to be part of my Facebook group and, spend some time there. And if they feel they want to take it to the next level, I'm there for assistance. But I think that's the biggest thing, being okay with not knowing and just understanding that you're going to get better and you can 100% do this. And focus on the end result. And the end result is you do this digital marketing, and I do like it. But I love the lifestyle more than anything. So I understand that I have to go through a few trials and tribulations, but I also am one of the few people that can go to the beach 10 minutes away on the weekend. So really any day of the week for that matter. But usually I reserve that for the weekend because I want to be relaxed and all that stuff. But yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great advice. I think everyone listening will really appreciate that. And so kind of final thing before we wrap up, do you have any kind of travel plans going forward? I know you hinted at kind of wanting to stay a little bit more based in Mexico, but anything on the horizon the next couple of years for places you want to go and work from?
Well, I didn't mention that I lived in the Philippines for almost 2 years. And so I would like to go back there at some point. The only thing about a lot of places around the world now, the rules are changing based on variant and things like that. So that's the only thing that makes me a little bit uncomfortable. So right now, I'll be exploring a lot of Mexico in this next year. I'm going to try to make it down to Argentina and perhaps Colombia and Brazil again. So I'm going to kind of stay in the Latin America countries until I'm a little bit more comfortable with going, very far. I was listening to a YouTuber, and he was talking about people were traveling to, Thailand, and one of the family members tested positive. And so the family had to be separated. And then this was a lot happening with that. And so I think every country is handling things, I assume, the best way they know how, but I just don't think traveling very far right now is a good idea. So I'm going to just stay in Mexico, hopefully in a few months, get a residency visa. And so when I do leave, I always have a way to come back with no problem.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah. We feel very similarly in terms of wanting to be somewhere where we know things aren't going to go too crazy.
Are you guys still on a tourist visa, or have you made the move to do a residency visa?
Yeah, we actually got our temporary residency in February of this year. So we'd kind of been in Mexico for a while and then went back we were visiting the States for a bit and thought, hey, well, we're here. We should get the residency so we make sure we never have to leave if we don't want to.
How long was that? Because of course I don't know. So how long did that take for you to, get the card?
So that's a good question. It seems like one of the big things with the process is the uncertainty of it all. We did our appointment February 26th, I believe.
February 27th or 28th, I think, in Denver.
Yeah, so we did it end of February, and then we had our cards by mid-April. And so once we you do the thing in the States or wherever outside of the country, and then you come back into Mexico. Apparently, there's also some ways to do it in Mexico now. Once you get back, then you have to start the second thing. And so I think our delay was more about getting an appointment where we were working with someone who was helping us, and it took them about a month to get the appointment. But once they got the appointment, that from that first time to you do the first appointment and then come back to get the card. And that took only, I don't know, maybe a week. So all told, I think it took 2.5 months, but probably could have been shortened.
Not even. I think it was that's 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was pretty quick for us. It
was kind of funny though. We did our thing, and then we were kind of going to go move to a different area and then travel around a bit. And so the people we're working with let us know, like, hey, it can take up to 6 months to actually get the card. And then I think probably like 8 hours later, they sent us an email being like, okay, the card's ready. And we were like, we just left town.
Oh, wow. Wow. Yeah. Well, I would like to find out some ways. And, of course, we can talk offline about this, but I'd like to actually try to get it done in Mexico instead of me having to leave because, it's a little bit more expensive for me to leave the country. Now, from what I've seen, you can do it here, but it's a lot more expensive than what it would be in the country. But I'm always looking for other, sources that are, very reliable. Because I've never worked with any of these people before, so I have no idea. But yeah, something that we can certainly talk about, offline. But thanks for having me. I really, I hope that this was helpful to all your listeners out there.
Yeah. And so if anyone listening wants to go, you mentioned your Facebook group, if they want to find out more about you, if they want to connect online, if they have any questions about marketing stuff, where should they go to connect?
Yeah. Okay. So there are a few places. My Instagram is Tawan the Nomad 19. That's Tawan the Nomad 19. That's one place that they can DM me at. They also can go to my YouTube channel, which is Money Travel Grow. And it's a channel to really help people become a digital marketer and help them gain location and financial independence. So I'll be doing a lot of really cool, interesting things next year. I'll be interviewing some guests and things like that. And some of my students who've gone through the process and have had success. And then the last place they can go to is my Facebook group, which is Digital Marketer Career Starter. And if they enter that into the Facebook group, they'll find me. Please become a member. I have a lot of information. And truth be told, there's so much information there that if they pieced it together, they could learn how to become a digital marketer. I mean, I consistently put information there. It's all free. And I mean, for me, the opportunities are out here. So let's make the most of it. And then let's make the traveling thing happen. If you're someone out there who've always wanted to travel, but just was uncertain about how you would sustain yourself, to me, this is the best way to go.
Amazing. We'll make sure there's links to all of that. And yeah, thank you so much for your time today, Tawan. This has been great.
Thank you. And good luck to you guys in 2022.
Thank you. You as well.
Thanks for listening to this episode. If you want more, make sure to check out the World Wanderers Insider, available on Patreon at patreon.com/theworldwanderers.
For show notes, head over to theworldwanderers.com. Find us on social media at The World Wanderers Podcast and join the private Facebook community at World Wanderers, a community for travelers.
You can always get in touch with us at info@theworldwanderers.com. And if you enjoyed the show, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. It really helps us find new listeners.
See you next time.